You was cracking, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Prison Break Raw. I'm your host, the one and only Big JD. Go ahead, give this channel a subscribe, share at least some messages or comments, thumbs up for the like, notification bell to be informed on all episodes when they drop. Before I begin this tour through mind control and the various different ways it was used in people in the prison system and society, I'm going to be giving a shout out to some of yous out there, some of my loyal subscribers, fans, diehards that are looking to promote your business. Give you a couple of seconds to advertise it right here. So we're going to start out with this week with, if you into online gambling, and that's the thing for you and you're looking to make a couple extra bucks, go check out www.alightsports.com. Tell them Big JD sent you. Tell them Big JD from Prison Break Raw sent you over there, and make you a couple of bucks if you into, spending, gambling on the games, whatnot. You got the playoffs getting ready to come up in the NFL and all that. So get in with that. Made a few bucks myself. Check it out. Highly recommend it. All right, so mind control. What is it? And how has it been utilized on people in the prison system? And how has it evolved into something that is now being used in the general public? You hear about it all the time. It's a lot of tinfoil hat type conspiracy. People say, people laugh at you, people think it's a joke, people think it's silly to even think about some kind of science fiction bullshit. To think that our government is so wholesome and pure that it wouldn't use these kind of experiments on its own people. Because that's only something that would happen in another country, somewhere else away from us, somewhere in some kind of a James Bond sci-fi type movie. But it would never happen here. But you're wrong. It happens all the time, and it's happening every single day right now. It started out in the early 1950s when the Cold War was just getting ready to take full swing and we had entered into the nuclear age. Right after dropping the bomb on Hiroshima back in 1945, the Cold War began after World War II with the Soviet Union. It was an arms race. People were making nukes all over the place. The Soviets could actually blow the world up. I think what it was 1 times over. We could do it 10 times over, the whole world. So there was a lot going on behind the scenes, a lot of spy type of shit, covert operations, counterintelligence, everything was happening. They're building spy planes and all. What better way to get all the information you need than to control somebody's mind? Not only that, but it is better to have control of somebody's mind than to have a bunch of individuals. And this is where we're heading today. This is why I said a lot of things in my last videos about why the celebrity hierarchy and the elites and all of them want to control your mind. Because it's easier that way. This has always been the thing. It started out with organized religion. Organized religion was a way and means to control the public in your mind under some fantasy, but it has evolved into the realm of science now. Starting with the MK Ultra project that was sanctioned originally in 1953, and it didn't get shut down supposedly until 1973. So that's 20 years. That's a whole lifetime for maybe some of yous out there. And what they had done is that they were using various forms of like LSD, chemicals, reverse psychology, sexual assault, all kinds of things, locking people up in rooms, deprivation, anything and everything you could in order to brainwash somebody, get into somebody's head, and erase the tape and put something on there that they wanted. They didn't like your playlist, so they erased it and put their own playlist on it, which is your mind. They did this in prisons. They did this in mental hospitals. They did it in people in society. And there was even one theory that said that Charles Whitman, the guy that got off on the clock tower somewhere in, I think it was Austin, Texas, somewhere down in Texas, but he went in there and just shot a whole bunch of people just for no reason at all. This was like, I think, one of the first open mass shootings that this country had was with Charles Whitman. And if you don't know much about him, check him out. So this was kind of like, in a lot of people and a lot of information that's out there, this was a pilot program to see if you can actually make somebody go out there and wreak some horrible havoc on the public and do something as crazy as this, is getting up there and shooting a whole bunch of people. A lot of people think that Lee Harvey Oswald was coerced mentally into actually shooting Kennedy, because remember, the MK Ultra program was actually 10 years old by the time that Kennedy got shot. So it's plausible. It's definitely plausible. In the prison system itself, specifically California, they had sanctioned a lobotomy program to carve out the criminal mind from the inmate population. Now, if you've ever seen the movie Mundo about Mundo Mendoza, former member of the Mexican Mafia, who's now the narrator on Perplexed News, they actually had scheduled him for a lobotomy, according to the movie. If you've seen it, I've seen it, and they had him scheduled for lobotomy. And the one thing that I know about the lobotomy and electroshock therapy in the California Department of Corrections and Rehumiliation, California Corrections and Rehabilitation, is that it was actually in the Title 15. There was a whole section in there when I first went into the prison system that discussed lobotomies and electroshock therapy. I remember reading it to my cellie, the big homie, right, and telling him like, damn, man, and he was telling me something about, yeah, I remember when they came out with all that and they were electing people to do that, and they were offering them parole if it could be shown that they had cut out the criminal mind from the subject. It's crazy to think about. It's like some Dr. No or some Doctor Strange type shit, but it's real, man. This shit was really happening. They ended up shutting down the lobotomy program in California. Nevertheless, it stayed in the Title 15 for many, many years. You could still see it in there. I don't know if it's still in there anymore. They might have finally cut it out. But it was in there for a very, very long time. And it was interesting to read the things that they were doing to people. I mean, you could actually volunteer for this shit. But they don't do it anymore. They use other ways, less primitive ways of actually controlling your mind. So a lot of the things that happen in the CDC or in any prison across the country is they love to control your mind. It's all about not so much rehabilitation or correcting the bad behavior by reducing recidivism through therapeutic or other such programs that lead towards a state of rehabilitation. It's more about basically just breaking you all the way down mentally. It's like everybody in there's a lab rat to something. We don't know sometimes what they're putting into our food. We have no idea what they're putting into the air. They have a lot of bells and sounds and whistles and tones, especially in the 270 or the 180 design. Anytime they get over the PA system, or anytime the count clears, or even the alarms themselves are like a high-pitched boop. It's crazy to think about it, but sometimes those noises that they have, it's like a woo, 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 over and over and over again, kind of like puts you almost into a hypnotic trance when you're not actually involved in the riot itself. It's like everybody is like almost in a hypnotic trance from this shit. The funny thing about being in there as well is the food itself and the way it would make you feel and the way it would make you act in certain circumstances or situations. We used to get this meat. We called it mystery meat or floaters, right? It was 2 slices of bologna, ham, whatever it was, but it was in a cryovac bag of some kind of chemicals. It said it was a preservative, but you can actually throw that bologna in your locker and leave it in there for 5 years and pull it out, and it's still just as good as it was the day that it was sealed in that bag. And the thing about all of this is they use a lot of different bells, whistles, tones, situations, circumstances, words of suggestion. I mean, these people are trained in all kinds of various psychology, right, to control the mind. And it's weird how Pavlov's dog, if you've ever heard of that story, like he was controlled by a bell. We're controlled by a bell in the prison system. And have you ever wondered why they started using the bells? Shortly after all these experiments were starting to take shape in the early 1940s, 1930s and stuff like that, they used a lot of bells and sounds in order to move you from one spot to the next. Before it was just like a siren, which is nothing, just a crank of a siren. But the bell, how did the bell get put into our schools and into prisons and various institutions like that in order to control the movement. You got to think about that. If you've heard of Pavlov's dog, he was controlled by the bell. The bell controls everything in schools and in prisons. So how did all of this evolve into what we see today? It's very simple to explain if you know what to look for. If you're not closed-minded and plugged into the herd mentality, like so many of you are, and it's really not your fault. I don't fault anybody for being plugged into the herd mentality and being alert and being lured into various different state sanctioned institutions like different political structures and structures of economics like socialism or communism or a utopian dream, pipe dream actually, because this is how they lure you in. This is how anybody lures you into any kind of brochure, soundbite, commercial. You go to a McDonald's and you look at a picture of the Big Mac and it's a big old juicy giant burger. You're like, damn, I want that. You get it. It's a smashed in little tiny burger in a box. These tricks are meant to lure you in through the optics. And what they had learned from 20 years of using the MK Ultra program, that it's very easy to control people's mind with optics, suggestions, and every other component of the environment that an individual has going on. If somebody's down on their luck, they're having trouble getting a girlfriend or they lost their wife, they're moving from one job to the next, right? All of this stuff shows up on paper some way, somehow. It's either showing up in social media or it's showing up on paper through taxes, the IRS, your Social Security. Is it bringing in any more money? How long have you been on unemployment? You ever wonder why they really do these census? The Census Bureau comes and forces you to fill out that long, boring-ass packet and send it to them. I had to do one. It's stupid, the shit that they ask you. Why the fuck do you want to know all this information in the first place? They want to know what kind of a person you are. Are you a loner? Are you an extroverted, outgoing personality of a person that's got a lot of friends, that's good in the community and stuff like that? But what are you really hiding? The government has branches within itself, and they use the celebrity mob and everyone in the media to figure you out. Anytime you turn on your DirecTV or your cable service, that's why they shut down pretty much all like UHF and everything like that, is because now you're locked into a contract through cable, through DirecTV, through any other source, the internet. They're monitoring your traffic. They're seeing what you're watching, what you're looking at. And they build a profile on you based upon all of these things that you view, that you look at, what interests you, what really piques your interest is what they use in order to get into your head. Now, I've said it several times to a lot of different people regarding a lot of these shootings that are occurring in this country. Now, everybody wants to blame guns. Here's the thing about all of that. Firearms, guns have been in human society for well over 500 years. Why is it that just recently, starting with Charles Whitman, in the height of the MK Ultra program, how is it that all of these other shootings started occurring later on? Before that, you didn't see a lot of these kind of shootings. There wasn't school shootings. There wasn't mass shootings in the streets outside of like gang-style shootings with the gangsters in Chicago and New York. But there wasn't mass shootings going on until recently. Columbine, for example. How did these kids get those fully automatic machine pistols and various other Tech 9s and whatnot in order to use for that shooting at Columbine? A lot of people say, well, they ordered them off the internet. Colorado at the time had one of the toughest, tightest gun laws in the country. But these kids got these average, everyday suburban white kids got their hands on these guns real fast. And I got to tell you, for being a person that's been in the streets, running amok and everything like that, I find it hard to believe that they just found those weapons just that fast. It's possible that somebody put them in their hands in order to start the spark. Because the way that this whole program works and how it has evolved is they look for trends. They look to push this optics, these optical illusions out onto you, soundbite you to death, clickbait type shit, put somebody out there that looks the part and it reels you in, it locks you in. You're just like a deer in the headlights, stuck and focused on it. And then with the Columbine kids, they made sure they blasted that all over the TV. And then guess what? They knew, because if I knew, they knew, that it was going to create a whole bunch of copycats. It was going to cause a chain reaction of copycats. It was going to go across the country. And sure enough, it did. We see it all the time. Now, you got Sandy Hook, you got the theater, that weirdo in Colorado, you got the other school down there in Florida. All these things, you got to ask yourself. And then Las Vegas, that's even more strange. How did that guy lug all that firepower up into that hotel room, cut out a piece of the glass on a window that's alarmed? Because if you know anything about Las Vegas hotels, you know all that shit is alarmed. How is it that that all occurred? And why is it that if he blew his brains out, if you look at the pictures of this guy, why were there bullets on top of the blood with no blood splatters on them? The casings. This man's mind was controlled, and when he was done, they murdered his ass. That's the way this shit works. The way it works now is you have a group of people inside of the system itself, the elites, the ruling class, that is trying to turn you into a bunch of peasants through these different ways. I've seen it in prison. They're conditioning people in prison, and they're handing out felonies like it's candy all across this country. You've got over 10 million people in this country, 10 million people who are convicted felons, and they're perfectly content with being under the 13th Amendment clause that has labeled them a slave and has restricted their rights. They're not even full-class citizens. They're second-class citizens, all of us that have a felony. They are content with that because the system will give them little bits and pieces, a little taste of something good here and a little taste of something good there in order to keep them quiet and not try to rile up support to get their firearms back or anything like that. They'll give them their rights to vote, and then now everybody thinks they got their rights back. But it's not really the whole story. These little things, in order to control your mind, is how MK Ultra and everything has evolved into what it is today, right? They use the celebrity mob. They use these various different personalities you see on social media and whatnot, lock you in. I'm getting ready to do a story on this dude named Nico Brown, I think his name is, or Nico Jones. He was convicted of a couple of counts of murder. But if you look at this guy, he's a gang member. I think he was in, Colorado as well. One of those states, I think it's Utah or something, but his face is all sliced up. He's got tattoos all over his face. Goes into court with his sunglasses on, and people think this dude looks like a stone cold killer that could just break your neck just like that. But the optics of this dude, wait till you hear that story, because that dude ain't all of what you may think he is. And just because he's killed some people don't mean he's a badass with his hands or anything like that. It just means that he had a lot of bullets in the clip. Because look at Jeffrey Dahmer. He's killed a lot of people too, but he, couldn't fight his way out of a wet paper bag, and everybody knew that. So these things that the media and the celebrities put out to you is the new MK Ultra in order to control your mind. In prison, it's used by various different suggestions, bells, sounds, tones, simulated lockdowns, different things, pinning people together like against each other. You'll see a CO will just go out and just, come on the block and say, this dude's a chomo that's getting ready to come in here, and that guy's in there for check fraud, and they end up killing him, and it causes all kinds of bullshit. Look what happened to Whitey Bulger, right? And the COs had actually gone in there and said, warning, here comes Whitey Bulger, everybody get ready to kill him. They control our minds with the machine that they use. The media, the celebrities, and everything like that, they put this stuff all over the TV, and it locks us in. Most of us believe what the news and stuff tells us, and we've already formed our opinions and drawn our lines in the sand politically according to what we've been told. Nobody knows this better than somebody that's actually been in prison, because prison is where they use it so openly and readily and without restrictions or without limits. And they're proud to say, yeah, we're fucking with your heads. In society, not so much. They'll basically call you a lunatic, a tinfoil hat, conspiracy theorist, and the likes. But in the end, What they're really trying to do is they're trying to strip everybody out of everything and just give you what you need according to your need, according to what your family needs, while they reap the benefits and all the rewards, them at the top. They control your mind if you allow them to. But MK Ultra is alive and well. It's just used differently. It's used through optics, suggestion, sound bites, all that stuff, social media, celebrities. That's the new MK Ultra for today. If you've been in an institution, you could spot the bullshit from a mile away if you were waking your mind up to the reality of it all and not just sitting in there playing pinochle and doing burpees all day long, but actually exercising and building up your mind, because you build up your mind, your body follows suit. Remember that I said that. Prison Break Raw, uncut, uncensored, no holds barred, non-sugarcoat, non-politically correct, all up in your face, slapping you with that dick of a reality with the tinfoil hat on. And I'm out.